Hi, I'm Barry Dowsett. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Myriad Associates. And today I'm going to be talking to you about R&D capital allowances. So the first thing we're going to talk about is first, what are capital allowances? Just before we come onto R&D tax allowances. So capital allowances are the equivalent of what we know as depreciation, but it's the tax treatment of those assets that you acquire. And the interesting thing is that typically companies get 18% for things like plant and machinery, fixtures and fittings, office equipment, etc. So that's 18% on a reducing balance. And this is different to, of course, your accounting treatment for depreciation, which you pretty much have to discount and for the purposes of corporation tax. Now, even though you get 18%, every company gets something called the annual investment allowance. That means how much they can spend on fixed assets or qualifying fixed assets, and they're able to expense those in year one. It's 100% allowance is given in year one. Now, at the moment, the rate is extremely high. It's at a temporary rate of 1 million. It has been since January 2019. Prior to that, it was 200,000. And if I go back to 2012, I believe it was around 25,000. So it does fluctuate, and it's something that gets decided as part of the government's budget each year. Now, so every company gets this annual allowance. So you're probably saying, so why, if I get all this £1 million worth of allowance, why and what is the importance of R&D capital allowances? Well, quick definition of what is R&D capital allowances, and that is that you get a write-off in year one. It's unlimited in terms of the value, so there's no cap threshold on that. And it applies to equipment, buildings, and motor vehicles. It applies to those relating to qualifying R&D activities. So the best example I can give you is if you've got a dedicated R&D building, R&D centre, then you've purchased that building and you've put equipment in there, and you've also given the R&D manager a company car. So the cost of the building, the plant and machinery, fixtures and fittings, etc., the R&D manager's car can all be written off in year one. Now, the building's extremely valuable because industrial building allowance was removed quite a few years back, so you get no allowances equivalent to allowances. Once again, it's depreciation, but you get none of that for buildings. But for R&D capital allowances, yes, you do. So there is a benefit in claiming R&D capital allowances. Certainly if you go above the annual investment allowance, but certainly if you've invested in a building to do R&D. Now, there's a couple of things I can talk to you about regard to how to, let's say you're partly using the building for the purposes of R&D or partly using a machine. You can apportion based on reasonable methods, and that's something which you will have to propose and put forward to HM Revenue and Customs as part of your R&D capital allowance claim that you make. But one of the key things is if your building, for example, is used for R&D purposes, 75% or more, you can claim the entire amount of that building, that addition. How do you go about claiming for capital allowances? Well, it's relatively quite straightforward. We do it on behalf of many of our clients, and that is through the R&D tax return. It basically is the same department, the R&D unit at HM Revenue and Customs review that. So clearly you put down the details of the fixed assets that you're claiming R&D capital allowances on, and you'll give potentially a little bit of narrative to give evidence that is used for R&D purposes, and we always sprinkle in a few pictures as well. But we do this on behalf of clients, typically, as it's the same team that look at R&D tax relief claims as do R&D capital allowances. We normally do one report that encompasses both. So it's relatively quite straightforward. As I've said, the R&D capital allowance at the moment is very useful in two areas. One is if you've built additions in terms of buildings, and also there's also cars as well, because cars fall outside the annual investment allowance. So if you've got an R&D manager that's driving around in a car and that's been purchased, absolutely put that through R&D capital allowances. And also last thing is don't forget computer systems as well as an integral part of that R&D centre. Okay, that's great. So any questions on this area, please feel free to reach out. My email's just there, and you can also see my telephone number. As I said, please reach out. Hope you've enjoyed watching, and see you again soon. You take care.